Let's speak further then about the return to Zimbabwean politics by Nelson Chamisa, the former opposition leader. We're joined by Dr William Mpofu, a political analyst and senior researcher at the Wits Centre for Diversity Studies. Good to have you on SABC News this evening, Doctor. So Nelson Chamisa is confident that he's back. He's got all of these plans to take on the ruling Zanu PF, which he has tried to do in the past. But what does he bring to the table in the current political climate in Zimbabwe?
I think the big question that Mr. Chamisa should answer and which he should take is the nation into his confidence on is he not a project of the ruling regime? It's a genuine, fair, and just question. Anyway, it's surprising that some among us are surprised about this, because in the first place, it cannot be a return because he never went anywhere. He was around, but he participated in the politics of that particular country with his absenteeism and abstinence from public affairs and related matters, leaving a population and a nation that is dying for change after many decades of corruption, political violence, electoral violence, and other violences. So there is no surprise at all, and only Mr. Chamisa can answer the question, what new idea, what new practice, and what new theory does it bring to that troubled landscape in that country?
I want to pick up on your earlier point. I want to pick up on your earlier point where you said one of the questions that begs asking is whether Chamisa is a product of what you termed the ruling regime in Zimbabwe. What do you mean by that? But secondly, he was accused at some point of playing a big role in the fragmentation of the opposition in Zimbabwe, right? From the MDC and what we know then was what followed, even to his party that he then established. Will that work against him ahead of elections and launching this comeback?
What is worrying in African politics, and specifically in Zimbabwe, as we are talking about Zimbabwe, is the tendency by ruling regimes to weaponize and instrumentalize their opposition. So you can have an opposition leader actually working for a ruling regime, managing the hearts and minds of the population to this direction and that direction, while keeping the status quo intact. That's a stubborn question that needs a stubborn answer from Mr. Chamisa himself. Because every other election, the people of that country are marshaled to elections. The elections are rigged. After that, there's a court challenge, and then people go home. The ruling regime continues for another 5 years, and then the same story. And there's this dangerous slogan that is circulating there, that God is in it. God is in everything. What the people of that country need is a leader that will marshal them and general them towards political activity that will deliver change. Not to ask a population of troubled people to look up to divine providence for solutions, when the people have the agency to liberate themselves from domination, from conquest, from exploitation, and other violences. Mr. Chamisa should take the nation into his confidence on that. Why are we supposed to look up to God instead of getting into political activity that will produce positive political change? And Africans need to be worried about that political messianism, where people are asked to pray instead of getting into public affairs and demanding positive change. That's not just a Zimbabwean problem, but an African problem.
And one of his goals, as laid out in this public address that we've just been listening to from Chamisa, is that he intends to fight the Zanu PF's intention to craft a way, an avenue legally for the current president, Emmerson Mnangagwa, to be able to participate in elections and possibly get another term in office. If the Zanu PF's wish comes to pass on that issue, what would that mean for the country and the opposition in particular?
This catastrophe, this tragedy, where political elites in the ruling regime and in the opposition collude, play by selling hope, play by selling promises, play by actually, let's say, conducting certain performances that delay rather than enhance the movement towards change. Africans, and Zimbabweans specifically, should be careful about the works of political elites that can publicly pretend to be opposed to each other, but are privately and secretly working together to maintain the access to resources. That's a troubling question in African politics that African populations should get worried about. And that has led to the increase in coup d'etats and unconstitutional seizures of power and all that.
Final thought then on what we should expect from Zimbabwean politics over the coming year. You've got Chamisa, who's now returned. You've got this apparent determination to challenge any attempt to secure eligibility from Mnangagwa to contest another election or stand for the Zanu PF in another election. What do you think that will birth?
I really want to project and circulate a warning that this might be another ruse. This might be another event, politically and historically, where both the opposition and the ruling regime are colluding to keep their access to resources and to power at the expense of the suffering populations. I think Zimbabweans, as Africans, should master the agents, the civic society, the populations themselves, the publics themselves, to call these politicians to account, identify committed leaders, and stop this elitist political collusion that delays and denies those suffering people positive political change. I think this is another game.
Dr. Mpofu, we do have to leave it there. My apologies. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Dr. William Mpofu, political analyst and senior researcher with the Wits Centre for Diversity Studies.